In celebration of Father's Day, we have a special episode. We will have one of our fathers join us in a conversation where we ask, what is the hardest moment that you have experienced as a father, past and present? We will talk about that and much more. Stay tuned to the Brothers in Fatherhood podcast. Welcome to Brothers in Fatherhood podcast, a show that's by Black fathers for Black fathers. I'm Apollo. Today, we have a special episode for the fatherhood out there. In celebration of Father's Day on June 21st, we have one of our fathers join the conversation where we discuss what was the hardest moment that you have experienced as a father, past and present. Has times changed the environment so much that our parenting requires major modifications? Is raising Black children now different than it was 20, 30 years ago? What are the similarities and what are the differences? We'll talk about that. Today, we have Joe, Alfred, Mike, Tedman, and Ted, Tedman's father.
Today's topic, we're going to talk about the challenges, one of the most challenging things that you experience as a father. From your standpoint, using your experience when you're actively involved in your children's life, bringing them up, and then what you foresee currently going on in the child rearing. Going into this, we wanted to get some fathers with years of experience with teenage and adult children to try to give us what was different back then versus what you see going on now. From your experience, sir, what would you say was the most challenging thing during the time when you're raising your children? First of all, how many children do you have, sir?
7.
Oh, okay.
6 and then my youngest brother, Christopher, the one you met in Washington. Isn't
okay.
that 7? 6?
6 plus 1.
No, 7. Yeah.
7 kids. That must have been extremely challenging. So I'm assuming you have plethora of stories and scenarios and situations that you can tell us about raising 7 kids. So what was the most challenging experience that you can think of, child rearing experience with those 7 children?
That is an interesting question. But before I answer that, I have to tell you that I have 2 sets of children, and then the younger one with a different person.
Okay.
I didn't raise them, and that's a whole nother movie for another time. Alpha personalities, and we just kept getting in the way of each other. So we parted company. So I did not raise them. And I still feel bad about that, even though they're like 99 years old, but that's neither here nor there. Same with the other one. But with T. Michael and his siblings, the challenge was not with them. It was with the mother. I had and still have a very good relationship with them because we were able to speak and exchange information and ideas. And when they were younger, I allowed them to speak because I thought that they had a voice and they needed to be heard. When I grew up, it was be seen and not heard. And I thought I had a brain for a reason and a mouth for a reason, but I wasn't able to express what I wanted to. So I allowed them to do that. I allowed them to push the limit as far as they could without breaking it, because my thought process was, if they can push the limits inside the house and have guidance inside, then when they go outside, depending on how I felt that they had learned anything, I'd either have to call them to find out if they're okay for 5 minutes, or leave them alone and let them live their lives. So each of the young men has 5 children, 5 different personalities.
Yep.
Really, you can't group them together. It's 5 different people. And they will come to you with different ideas, different thought process, different everything. And a couple of things. I don't know how small they are, but if you have small children and if you're talking to them and teaching them, you want to get down as far as you can so that you can look them in the eye and talk to them so that they will understand what you're saying. right? And that's a repetitive process. And what I did was I would talk to them, and then I'd ask them, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" And if they didn't, I'd say it again. And if they did, I'd say, "Okay, well, now you know, and you understand what I'm saying. This is the consequences for whatever actions you take." So they can. I never accepted them saying, "Well, gee, Dad, I don't know," because when a person says that, they're not thinking. And I didn't want to raise robots. I wanted to raise people that had a thought and would be able to express themselves. It was very challenging. Money was always an issue because I mean I had, like I said, I had another set of children that I had to take care of. So
Dang.
so challenges. Tim Edmond, he had a very short fuse when he was growing up, but I was always able to talk to him and communicate with him about different things. And I remember in high school, because he's half East Indian, they would make fun of him because of the way he looked. And I would talk to him, and every chance I got, I would talk to him and listen to what he had to say. And I went to work one day. He said he was going to wear a turban to school, and I thought, oh, he's just waiting for an ass whipping. He got that flag waving. And I said, well, why would you do that? He said, because I thought about what you said. I've embraced the information, and I like me just the way I am. And if they can't accept that role, then I'll know who my friends are. And I thought that was very big of him, because it said to me, one, he accepts who he is. He embraces that. We're all different. We look the same. We're all different in some way or another. I like that about him. And like I said, the relationship that we have now is great, because whenever they have a problem, they call their sister, which is good, because I've always said to them, you guys are going to be together longer than you're going to be with us. So you come to me, but make sure that, you talk to each other as well, because we never know when we're gone, or when I'm gone, you're going to have a listening ear or a shoulder. I never had any problems or issues with them. Nothing other than just school stuff with kids. Mm-hmm. They never gotten in any trouble that I know of. Mm. So, and if they did, I'm sure, I'm almost positive that they would tell me, because they know that I wouldn't judge them too much. I made it a rule not to give them advice. I don't believe in giving people advice, because the reason I don't give advice is I don't know what you had to do and what challenges and hurdles you had to go through to get to where you are today. I don't know. And if I gave you advice, it's going to be based on my experience and my journey. You'll never see that. You'll never see Saad's journey. The only part of Saad's journey that you'll see is that window that they will all give to you, because you guys are brothers. But at the end of the day, there are certain things that they cannot, should not, and would not share with you guys. That's just nature. That's just the way it is. But the good thing is, you guys look like you're building a community, so that you have each other to pull from and to talk to and mentor and bond and share with. And I like that. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is a good idea. We should do it.
Well, it's a great idea. I wish I had thought of it. But yeah, there are things that I could tell you to look for, especially if you have small children. But when they're that small and they're completely dependent on you, it's just you have to do everything. But when they get to be toddlers, and you can see them moving, and that's how you teach them and say, hey, it's easier when they're older. Put it that way.
Yeah. I definitely want to expand, and this is for everybody out there. Sorry, Alfred, but everybody out there that has multiple children. So you touched on something real quick. And I want to kind of pull the thread on. You made a statement that each one of your children were distinctly different, and you approach it to make sure that you identify that uniqueness and approach each one of those differently. Like you couldn't do it just as like a blanket, hey, I'm going to treat you all the same. So you treated them as individuals, understanding that they have their own personalities, they have their own quirks, they have their own strengths, they have their own weaknesses. For those fathers that have multiple children, have you identified within those children all their variables and all their variances, and how do you approach that equally and treat them fairly across the board, but understanding there's differences?
Oh, good question. Well, you cannot. I could not let. I never felt one was more important than the other because they're, like I said, they're very distinct. I could not talk to Tedman the way that I talked to his sister and brother because Tedman is mute your earphones there, Tedman. Tedman is
No.
I learned early that Tedman is one of these people that learns by personal experience. I'll say to him, son, if you do that, it's gonna hurt. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And I'll give you an example. I remember I was cleaning my boots one day and he was jumping off a swing and he was going pretty high and they were having a good time. So I didn't want to really interrupt them, but I saw something. I called him over. I said, you having fun? He said, yeah. I said, well, you're going up kind of high. Don't go up that high because, you never know, something might happen. He said, I'm all right, Dad. He went, I guess they got really excited and he went up. And when I looked at him and I saw the way he came down, I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a lesson. But he's a tough cookie. He broke his arm and he was like, Dad, my arm hurts. Move your fingers. No. Okay. And then started swelling up. Like, I guess it is broken. And he's always been like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are people like that. That's not a bad thing. But I always made that cushion that if he fell, that I'd be there to catch him.
All right, there you go.
And he's done that a couple times, and I caught him. So which made so now we can speak as adults, which is great because that's what I wanted anyway. And sometimes he tells me things I really don't want to get.
Oversharing. Okay.
Yeah. His brother, on the other hand, he's the intellect. He's kind of, you tell something once and it's a wrap, And his sister's she's definitely their mother.
She's older?
She does not mince words. She will tell them you are jacked up. Because I'm the dad, I want to be nice. She tell them straight out, you effed up. So
from the standpoint, Ted threw out there that he had seven children, right?
Yes.
From those 7 children, he identified that every last one of them have a distinct personality and have character traits that are all their own. So in that, raising those children, how do you treat them equally, but also recognize their individuality and parent them? Ted gave his initial remarks. I do want to hit Joe because Joe got the second most with 5 children now. How do you identify that uniqueness and you want to cultivate that uniqueness, I assume, right? But how do you keep them? How do you raise them equally when there's so many of them?
That's a challenge that you're probably going to have to be doing. I do on a daily basis. My kids are 1 week old, 5 years old, 7, 9, and 11. So everyone is an individual. So I got to kind of look at their personalities and then try to figure out what am I going to expose them to. And I try to expose my kids to everything, to traveling, to sports, to gaming, to you name it, just as much as they can as they're young. And then from there, you can kind of get to see what their interests are and what they're not interested in at all. Having two boys, back to back, my oldest are the two boys at the 11 and 9-year-old. My immediate thought was that they'll be into sports because I was into sports, but it's not the case. They're not into sports at all. I'm gonna say probably 5 or 6 years ago, that kind of got to me because, I was as a dad, you want your kids to be in sports. It's just, you want to be able to teach them basketball, football, soccer, whatever you played, you want to be able to teach that. And I thought for sure that my son will play baseball. So I got him in as early as like 4 years old. And he wasn't feeling it. So then I got him in soccer and he wasn't feeling it. And my second son, he hates sports, but he's very fast. And he, I grew up and I ran track even in college. So my immediate thought was, okay, I can actually teach you to actually run faster, better, with some little bit more technique. And this could be something we can do. But when we get to the track, he doesn't want to do that. He likes to run, but he doesn't want to compete. And so then now I had to just take that step back and say, okay, what are you really interested in? And art was his that was his thing. Before this year, before the COVID-19, on a Friday night, he would be sitting here at our dinner table, 11 o'clock at night, drawing portraits. And the first thing he did, he's 9 now. I'm going to say when he was about 4 or 5 years old, he turned on Netflix and the Garfield was on, right? And all he did was press pause on the Netflix TV and he drew the Garfield. And to get the how he wanted to be drawn, he kept pressing play, pause, until he got the angle that he needed, and then he drew it. So then I started kind of zoning in. Okay, he likes art. I'm gonna go ahead and get him some things to do art, and I got him around art. My oldest son he's into basketball. He's into gaming. All 4 of them are into gaming, and that's their thing. So that was a tough pill to swallow because when we grew up, gaming wasn't something you did as a sport. You know what I mean? That was something you did as entertainment for on the weekends when it's winter time. If it's raining outside, you do video games here and there. But in 2020, gaming has actually turned into a sport. People are actually winning and earning millions of dollars on games. You know what I mean? So I had to kind of tell myself to take a step back, like, you know what, am I missing something here? Because if I don't allow them, they're really good at it. My daughter's 5 years old and she's actually better than my 11-year-old at some of these games. And I had to just tell myself, okay, am I missing something here? Because I don't want to miss the opportunity where something's just getting started and I'm not
holding them back or something.
I'm not letting them hold them back from something that actual people are really getting paid from. But it's so new that you kind of contradict yourself. Like, you know what, you can't play game. You just can't play games. You can't play games all day. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? But if you put them in football, if you put them in a sport, you go out and you'll practice with them. You'll get in practice. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to this particular game if you are getting paid for it. And the truth of the matter is right now, there are athletes now who are actually getting paid to play video games. That's a real thing. They're selling out stadiums just like a regular sports venue, and they're winning tournaments where it's upwards. I think the most recent one was like a $10 million tournament. So that's similar to golf. You know what I mean? You go in there and you compete and you win a $10 million tournament just to play a damn video game. Now it's new to me. It's new to us because that wasn't around, but it's not new to them. So then I've zoned into that. So you're good now.
All right. So want to break this up a little bit. So going back to the original question, you said, so it's about unique and distinct. So to summarize kind of what you said that, hey, I thought my children, at least my sons, were going to be something similar to how I grew up and my likes and my interests. Turned out that wasn't the case, far from the case. However, the thing that all of them have in common, you can even attribute to their environment and the current day and age, that they're all into video games. So that's what you use to cultivate, to try to equalize and treat them equally, as through this gaming. You got 2 of your sons two of your sons have YouTube channels playing video games. Your daughter's into it. That's how that's how you're making those linkages. However, raising the children, you identified right off the bat, hey, they're not anything like I was when I was a child, when I was their age. They don't like the same things. So let me identify things that they're into so then I can make a connection with them. Just so happened to be gaming. That's how I kind of took it.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. So now whoever else wants to jump in, either Mike or Tedman, same question that older Ted said, and then Joe laid into, how do you raise children that are different from each other and without sacrificing, hey, I'm treating one better than the other or picking favorites? How do you raise your children with those unique individual characteristics? I understand that it's a challenge.
Yeah, so sure. I'll jump in. So I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. It's automatically different. Boys and girls, right? So growing up I had a sister, but my sister was a tomboy. So she did literally everything we did. Play sports. She actually full ride scholarship for basketball. Could have had a full ride scholarship for track. Like, she's an athlete. I didn't see her play with dolls too much, but having my daughter who's into dolls and makeup and jewelry and whatever, right? All the frillies, the princesses. I'm like, man, I don't know nothing about this stuff. Like, how do I connect? How do I do that? How do I raise her and be a part of that? She wanted to do tea parties, and I had to jump into tea parties and do all of that stuff. Being my wife was in the military too, I had to learn how to do her hair. All right. So my wife was gone for 3 weeks straight. There's no way I could let her walk around with the fro the whole time. I had to do something, got to put some ponytails in her hair or something. So just having her and trying to understand what a girl wants. Like, for example, she just turned 9 last week. She wanted a doll for her doll.
There you go.
My mom was blown. I'm like, that's the thing? Like, there's no way I'm getting her a doll for a doll. My wife is like, why not? Like, that's what girls do. I'm like, ew, this is dumb. You know what I'm saying? So just thinking about that and having to adjust, because my son, on the other hand, is a man's man, right? He is the typical boy. He loves trucks. He loves, sports. He's into beating up and jumping off things and let's fight and pow, you know what I'm saying? Like, wrestle and, let's get it. And that's him. He always wants a car with him. He wants monster truck, everything. You know what I mean? So it's completely different. And when one requires my attention more than the other, that becomes my favorite. Whoever I'm dealing with at the time is my favorite child, right? So I don't have a favorite child in particular. I love them both the same. But whoever needs that attention in that moment, that becomes my favorite child in that moment. Hey, your brother needs me right now. You don't need anything. Relax. I love you just as much. I'm going over here with him. Or sit your butt down. It's your sister's turn. You're good. I'm finna spend some time with her. And then when it's together, we try to do something that we can all do together, right? So treating them different, like my daughter, I can almost give her a stern talking to and pretend like I'm a whooper and she's good or she's going to cry. My son, on the other hand, is going to do everything he can until I barely tap him on his little butt, and then all hell breaks loose. But if I pop him hard, like he a man, bah, you know what I'm saying? He just look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, this dude is, you know what I'm saying? And then knowing him, like, my daughter's not as stubborn. My son is me all day. I'm stubborn when it comes to certain things. He is persistent than a mug. If he wants something, he's not stopping until he gets it. So I have conversations with him like, dude, you're strong-willed, but my will is stronger. You're going to do what I say do in this moment, right? And I don't have to do that so much with my daughter. They're different ages, so I can talk to her and have a rational conversation. But with him, I have to get his emotions out the way and let him calm down, because he could be super dramatic like his mom. And because I'm not so dramatic, she is in certain parts. But he could be super dramatic. So I have to, hey man, take a breather. It's not that serious. I just want another truck. So I'm like, dang, like, bro, it is. Let's take a breath and, we'll handle it. So I'm just understanding who they are and where they're at in that moment allows me to treat them uniquely. And understanding that the way I punish one is not going to be the way I punish another. My son isn't at the point where he's getting grades in school, but he doesn't really want to pay attention in school. right? He wants to do what he wants to do in school, the pieces that he find fun. But if it's not fun to him, he's like, I don't want to do it. But my daughter, on the other hand, loves school. She's going to do every little bit of it. So understanding how to treat them and the punishment that they get based on how they do things. Like my daughter, and it's sad just because of the age that they are, but I'm more strict on my daughter when she does something that she knows out of character. I'm like, hey, you know that's out of character, but I know you just saw your brother do the same thing, and I not say nothing to him, which is weird. You know what I'm saying? So being able for them not to see favoritism and how that they're different. You know, your brother's different in this area. When you do this, I don't say nothing to him, but if he does what you do, I get on his butt, right? So explaining it to him and seeing those differences. So that's how I go about it. It's tough, especially not having a girl that obviously that boys like Apollo. I gotta train her up right, have some confidence. Mr. Ted, you don't know the story, but we were in Hawaii. His youngest and my daughter are the same age, just about. Mm-hmm. And his son walked up to my daughter and kissed her.
Hold on.
You know what I'm saying? Just kissed her out of nowhere. I'm like, hey man. They were like 2-3 years old.
Like
2 years old, 1 or 2.
Yeah, and
about girls for the rest of his life.
His daughter was
Oh, come on.
A little bit too much showtime or whatever. And was just there.
Jesus. Oh man. Hey, according to Apollo is what she was wearing.
What you got, sir?
Can I ask you both a question?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Did your daughter or son ever see you kiss your wife?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember, they do what they see. They repeat.
Right.
So if you don't want them to see anything, you got to put blinders on them. But that's not practical.
Right. Nah, yeah. I agree. No, we was just joking. Yeah. Joe.
Okay. So, and this is for all of us. It's not egotistical, but we want our children to be an extension of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair. It's not fair at all. Remember I said I don't give advice because I can't tell you how to do something. I don't know what journey you've taken to get to where you are. So for us to try, if we want them to be exactly an extension of us, that's going to be a long, hard road. Also, we want them to have their own minds and thoughts and expressions and the whole 9 yards. We are there to guide, teach, nourish, embrace, and let them go. If you guys get a chance at some point, watch the animal channel, 1 or 2 of them, and you'll see how differently each species will raise and teach their offspring. It's really quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The hawk, the American eagle, is like probably the coldest one because what they'll do is they'll feed the kid, and the kid will try to crawl out of the nest, and they'll just let him crawl out and fall and hit the ground. It won't help them. And I'm thinking that's crazy, but after a while, it teaches them to flap their wings. Other animals, they like a kangaroo. They do everything they do everything. They have them stuck in there, and so to me, each one of them has a different way of rearing their offspring. We're no different. I would love for my son to do exactly what I do, but you know what? I want them to be better at life than I've become. And I think that I've given them the tools that they needed to do that. And when I let them go, you got to let them fly. I can't fly for them. So if they want to do whatever they want to do, I'll do my best to encourage them and counsel and try to give them all the tools that they need and watch them grow.
You mentioned the American eagle kind of just lets their offspring get out there and try their hand immediately. Just say, well, you're going to have to learn sometime. In your experience, how did you force the envelope in getting like Tedman, for instance, to get out there and flap his own wings? Were you strong-armed, like to say, hey, at this point in time, you should be able to fly, get out there and do your best? Or was it, hey, you can stay as long as you want until you're able to get out there and flap your wings? I assume there's a good mix of both. You don't want to be premature and lead to failure, but you also don't want to be kitty gloves and enable them not to be their own person.
Well, I watch them develop and I watch them try and do things, but I never tried to force them to do anything. I never tried to force them to do anything. Whenever we would have an issue, I'd sit and talk to them about it. And then I would say, how do you feel about it? What, and if they said, well, I'm not ready for that, that's fine. Because if you push your children into things, they can learn to resent it and to resent you as well. Also, if you allow them the chance to think for themselves and make decisions for themselves, that's a wonderful lesson right there. Because they're able to think, reason, and if they have an issue, they'll say, "Hey, Dad, can we talk about this?" Rather than, "Oh, I know everything. I've got a couple sons. I know every damn thing under the sun." And that's fine. But I'm sure at some point, I hope they have somebody to talk to and go, "Man, I really hit the wall that time." But we can't, especially now. We have got to try to raise really empowered and clear thinkers under the circumstances, especially now that we're living in. We can't dictate and tell them what they have to do and what they should do. There are guidelines, yeah. You give, like one of the things that I taught my children is this: you shouldn't do everything that you want to do. The only thing I'm telling you is this: think about the consequences of the actions that you take. If you can live with the consequences of the actions, then by all means, you go ahead and do what you want to do. If for 1 second you don't think you can live with it, you might want to rethink. Like I said, I saw Tedman jumping off the swing. I'm like, hey, you think that's a good idea? Yeah. And it was a good idea until it became not such a good idea. Will I sit back and watch him get hurt or killed? No. But I can't. At some point, he's going to have to take the bull by the horns and decide for himself what he needs to do. And there's nothing wrong with walking away. It's not quitting. Some people call it quitting. But if you think about what you're doing and you decide, hey, I need to walk away from this, it may save you from something detrimental that you may face. But we have to let them fly. We got to let them try things on their own, and we guide them, teach them, and encourage them. Yeah, I wanted him to be exactly like me, but he's not an extension. They are their own individual.
Yeah. So I think it's almost vanity. So we want our offspring, our children, to be an extension of us. I think that's just our human nature, right? So we want them not only to be like us, but to essentially be better than us. Any parent, at least from my standpoint, wants their children to go above and beyond what they did to progress upon the foundation that you laid and become truly a better human being than you are. I mean, whether that's in material things or just intellectually, you want your children to be a better version of you. To what extent, I don't know. But I definitely think that at some point, to the original question was, hey, at what point in time do you let the reins off and say, hey, go out and do great things. You need to learn these life lessons for your own. This is a general question out for everybody. At what point in time do you let your children figure out for themselves? At what point in time do we let our children kind of figure it out and test the waters on their own? Do you gradually do it? Or is there actually a set time where you say, hey, yeah, now you should be good to go?
Figure it out is one thing that I say out of my mouth on a daily basis. And if you don't believe me, you can ask all 4 of my kids. When they ask me something, I say, figure it out. After that, I often say, hey, go to YouTube and check it and search it. And because to me, they can, in order for them, like Mr. Greaves said, I don't want to give them answers to anything when I know they can get it on their own for the most part. If you want to learn how to do something, don't get me wrong, I'm going to guide you. I'm going to tell you what to do, but I want you to be self-sufficient. I want you to be able to just think. how can I figure this out? You know what I mean? And that's why I say figure it out. And eventually they figure it out. But they're originally, and because they're kids, they're looking for the answers from their parents. That's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I continue to give them the answers, then eventually they're going to be helpless. They're going to constantly come to me for everything. And I don't want that. So as early as 5 years old, that's why I'm just speaking for my daughter. This is how my daughter at 5 years old figured out how to play the game with her siblings. And because she figured it out at an earlier age than my other kids that she's playing with, she's better than them. She had to figure out how to actually take that remote control and figure out which buttons. She had to figure out how to put the actual CD into the PlayStation when she plays. Then she had to figure out, once I got her an iPad, how to work that. But I never helped her. She figured it out. And now she knows more about these games than I do, because I never taught her anything. And honestly, truth be told, I don't play games. So it wasn't much I can actually teach her. So I was like, just figure it out. You'll get it. And it was respectful. It wasn't like, get out my face, figure it out. It was just like, no, go figure it out. You'll figure it out after a while. And it was a little crying. It was a little, distance, and they figured it out. But everything that they want to do, I tell my kids, figure it out. I always say that. And then come to me when you got it figured out. Talk to me about it, and then we can kind of go from there.
So you let them experience the journey, the learning experience for themselves. Yeah. And then you kind of watch and observe, but if they get too far off track, you kind of nudge them back in or something?
I nudge them back in.
All right.
That's the way that, to me, it's the best way of learning. And I'm noticing this with my kids. I'm experiment with certain things, but with my kids, I just understand that I'm letting them test the waters with a bunch of different things. And then I'm just taking notes. Some things that I thought that they were going to be interested in because I was interested in them, they're not. And that's okay. But if you asked me that question, let's say about 9 years ago, it would have been a totally different answer. Because when my first two boys were born, it was instant. They're going to be football players. They're going to be basketball players. They're going to be baseball players, because that's what I did. So I actually wanted them to go in the same direction that I went into. But as they got older and I realized that they didn't want to do that, I stepped back quick. And I took notes. It was like, they don't want to be like me at all. And that's okay. They need to be their own individual. That's why I tell them to just figure it out, go do the research. And eventually, once they do this, they can come back. And before you know it, they know way more than what they knew before they asked me.
All right. Let's see, Alfred. Alfred been sitting over there. He's been shaking his head.
Yeah. No, I only have just one child, but just that going off that old cliche, when people, look up to you and they may say, hey, I want to be just like you when I grow up. My answer, even when I was in high school, has always been, no, don't be just like me, be better than me. Yeah. And I always took it from a mindset as, there was a lot of mistakes that I had to go through and endure, that if you went through the same thing, you may not be where I am today. So if you were better than me, or if you tried to be better than me, you don't have to, make those same mistakes or, have those same failures as I did. So I always had that mindset. And it's interesting, Mr. Greaves brought up, how we always want our children to be extensions of us. And of course, that's what I want with my son. But he made a valid point that, their journey is going to be a lot different than ours. And that really just struck a chord in me, because I was like, man, that is true, because he's going to be growing up in a society that has been, decades ahead of when I was growing up, and you take in, for instance, the social media, the electronics, et cetera, you name it. All of that has advanced since I was a kid. So just in that sense alone, that journey is going to be totally different for him growing up. So even though, I may want that just because, that's a fatherly thing. You want your son to be that extension of you, but his journey is going to be totally different. And now, just with this conversation today, it just made me realize, like, man, it is going to be different, because, and I have to accept that, because, so, yeah. And I'm accepting that, like, man, that's why I was shaking my head, because, like, man, I agree, and I have to accept that. You know what? Even though I want him to be an extension of me, his journey is going to be totally different from mine, and I can appreciate that.
I don't remember. I don't think you remember. There was a joke I made. This is before your son was born. When I say, "Hey, good luck." By the time your son is a certain type of age, you're going to be at this age. It wasn't a crack at you being an older father. It's a crack that generational gap and the advancement of certain things has changed so quickly that I myself currently right now with an 11 and a 9-year-old feel so far removed from that childhood that I seem like a dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? So I can only imagine what it would be like by the time your son's maybe around the same age as my youngest, about 9 years old. They may be having flying cars. They may be having, this instant chip in their finger when they hit and the whole screen pops up. We don't know, right? Like you could easily say 10, 12 years ago that everybody would have this little device that they can search internet and all this other stuff. And like, the internet, you mean that thing you have to dial up on? The stuff is advancing so quick that we want to see our children be many extensions of ourselves and do better and advance upon what we did. But the environment is changing so quickly and rapidly that our children are going to be in a completely different environment than what we experience. So they're going to have a whole bunch of different trials and tribulations that are going to shape them and form them into different people. You would hope for the best, but we just don't know. So understanding that you do want your children to be extensions of yourself, to grow and expand, upon what you build as a foundation for them and raising them. You want them to be better than you, but you also want them to have your characteristics, your values, your morals, all that good stuff. So you want them to be an extension of you, but understanding they're not going to have the same experiences that you did growing up. So their environment's going to be different. However, the stuff that you may be instilling upon them may be the same, but their environment is going to be different. So they're going to turn out differently. Understanding that, how do you approach that and make sure that you have expectation management, understanding that they're not going to be exactly like you, that you can, try to set it up any way you want to try to make sure you get that end result. But at the end of the day, they're going to be different.
I will say that I never wanted my children to be like me, because I remember a lot of the negative things that happened when I was a child. Not too negative. I mean, nothing really bad happened, but I just remember feeling kind of weird out there, not liked. I'm remembering now that I was a bit of a jerk in high school and in college. I know it was me, because I looking back at it, I didn't understand why a lot of people had problems with me. And when I got to college, I had a sit down meeting with a bunch of guys, and all of them had something negative to say about me, and it hurt so bad. But that was the day I realized, wait a minute, it's not them. If and this is something I go back to, if 50 people say that you have a drug problem, you're the only one that's saying you don't, you do way too many drugs way too often. It's always something that I go to. My kids will probably hear it when they get older. You have to look at yourself and make sure that you're not the problem. Because if a lot of people saying that you're the problem, you're the only one that's saying you're not, it's definitely you. So I never wanted my kids to be like that. I never wanted my kids to have that short fuse that I used to have.
You used to have?
It's way better. It's way better. Way better. I see my children, I interact with my children, and I realize that they have a lot of the personality traits that I have, and a lot of the personality traits that their mother has. And, it's a mix of good and bad. And you don't, inherent in our nature, we don't focus on the good. It's the fishbowl effect. A bunch of people doing the right thing will always be overshadowed by one person doing the wrong thing. It's kind of scary for me seeing my children doing similar things that I did, because I remember how hard it was to cope with some of the things. And like I said, I had a great child. I had a wonderful childhood with a bunch of great parents that, you know, cared for me immensely, but that didn't help. That didn't change how I felt about it. So looking at my kids, I can see how they are and how I was, but I can't tell them, well, you should do it like this, because they're not going to do it anyway. You know, they're just going to look at me like, hey, Dad, you're not me and I'm not you. You know, my twins are not old enough to really articulate what they're thinking, and my oldest is, and it's hard talking to them. Well, talking, I say talking. It's hard trying to discipline him without making him think that it's personal. It's not personal, but I know that's how he feels, because I know that's how I felt. Dad always says you can't tell anybody anything. You can give them suggestions, but at the end of the day, it's up to them. And that's, for me, that's the hardest part of being a parent, is that I can't tell my children anything. I have to let them experience it. I don't want them to stick the fork in the light socket, because I know it hurts, but they have to, because they won't understand.
I'm pretty sure I disagree on that. So
I do too.
You can't stick a fork.
I understand your example.
It won't kill you. It will not kill you.
I understand your example. I'm just saying.
I've stuck many forks in many light sockets, and I am alive. I have all 10 fingers.
The first time didn't good enough? I'm confused.
Well, you know,
so
Jesus.
Mr. Green, now I understand a lot now.
Yes, your whole conversation before is amazing based on what I just heard. So.
Bless you, sir.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Sticking forks.
Hey.
I'm not judging you. I'm just, the first time wasn't enough. That's all I'm confused.
It sounds a lot like judgment.
Y'all thought he was Indian. He ain't Indian. That's from sticking that fork in there. That's what that's from.
I love it. No, that's awesome.
One of the lies I told him, yeah, you're Indian. It's okay.
No, I get it. I get it, though. I understand.
So many of them. Hey, I tell you shouldn't do that. Well, hey, you learned something, didn't you? Yep, I sure did that. I learned a lot.
So I was always told that there's three different type of people out there: people that learn from their mistakes, people that learn from other mistakes, and then there's people like Tedman. You know what I mean? That just don't learn at all.
Insane.
Free spirit. We need them.
I love people like Tedman because I get to learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, man.
I think that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, sure.
I'm good. And then
going in, I wrote something down. I think it was Joe that brought up you have to kind of experiment with your children, as almost if you have this live laboratory where you have all your children in there and you're just trying different experiments. So you don't know what's right and wrong as a parent. You're trying and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. So Ted, this is a question I'll pitch to you. Did you ever find yourself experimenting while you were actively child rearing and parenting with your children? And if so, what were the most vivid experiments that you recall in your days raising your children?
Experimenting? What exactly do you mean?
So experimenting meaning trying a different approach than you normally would to try to get a desired end result with your children. Understanding that you say you kind of have to let them have their own journey, but was there ever a point in time where you said, "Hey, whatever I'm doing doesn't seem like it's working. let me experiment and try something new that I haven't tried before?
Oh, that's going to happen every second of the day. It just does. It's just, there's no pattern or book that can tell you how to raise a child. It's impossible, because especially if they have a mind and they have a brain, they want to use it. It's not going to work. So you guide them. You let them get their hands in there, and son, if you stick that fork in there, it's going to hurt. But the only way he could do that, the only way Tedman could learn that, is by doing that. My other son, like, okay, well, if you said it's not good for me, then I ain't doing it. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because that's how people grow. That's how things are invented. Someone had to go out there and say, you know what? Why do you keep telling me I can't do this? There's got to be a way around it.
But at any point, did you figure, hey, my one son can really learn from others, while the other one has to experience? So I say the same thing about my two boys. I have one that can learn from others and understand certain things. The other one, well, he's just out back. You know what I mean? Like, he out back playing with dirt. I mean, he just and that's how I kind of see Tedman in what you're saying. Tedman was the one, oh, yeah. I got this one son. He's well accomplished. He's well polished. And then I got Tedman. So.
Ooh, I didn't say that on that. They're both accomplished. They're both accomplished, and their own personalities has taken them to the destination that they have gotten to.
Yeah, but when they were children, did you ever have that thought in your back of your mind, like, man, this kid he keeps on sticking this dang on forks in these sockets?
No, I never did.
You weren't worried about his well-being or his future?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You remember I said in the beginning that I'd be that cushion in case they fall. And that's what we have to do. Let them go through. This is my opinion. Let them go through those experiences and let them and experience these things and make those whatever mistakes they're going to make. As long as they come back to you and say, Dad, can we talk about this? This is what I did, and this is the result that I got. And I never said to them, well, you should have done this. And I said, well, what were you thinking? What can you do differently? Because remember, I want them to think. When they get outside of that house, they can't call me every 5 minutes and ask me, well, Dad, should I go left or right? Oh, damn it, figure it out. You have the information. You collect the information that you need to collect, and you make a decision. You know what? I have never in my life made a bad or wrong decision, ever. And I'm 98 years old. I look good, don't I? And whenever I say that, people say to me, that is the most egotistical, whatever the word is. Egocentric that I've ever heard, until I explain it. And I explain it this way. At the moment that I made that decision, based on the information that I've collected, that was the best decision for me to make. However, if I don't get the results that I was hoping for, didn't make it a bad decision. Didn't make it a bad decision at all. Obviously, if I stick a gun in my nose, then that's just asinine. So that's not what I'm saying. But you guys are all educated. You're faced with something. What's the first thing you need to do? You need to pick the information and knowledge that you've received and learned, and come to a decision. One decision, and you follow through with that. If it doesn't work out, then do something else. But at the time, it's the best decision that you can make. Think about that.
No, that's deep, and I fully tracking what you're saying. So the best decision, you never made a wrong decision. You made the best decision at the time with the information that you readily had available. 75, 80% solution based off the information that you have readily available right now may be the best decision that you can make due to the time sensitivity of the scenario. But I still can't get over Tedman sticking the dang on fork in the outlet several times. That is
so special.
so the reason why I bring that up, a true concern that us parents have, at least I do as a father, right? Should we have that natural worry about our children not living up to their full potential? Like I said, I joked about, hey, we got this one stellar child that's an achiever, then we got Tedman. So when it comes to it, do you worry about some of your children not living up to their full potential, seeing how you raised them essentially the same, understanding their uniqueness, and you're instilling certain tools in them? But do you worry? Should there be a natural worry from your experience on any one of your children not living up to their full potential?
So let me ask you this: what is your child's full potential? You have no idea. You have no idea. None of us have any idea of what our children are capable of. You don't have any idea what you're capable of, because should you be faced with something that's out of your ordinary and you are way out of your comfort zone, you're gonna have to perform, right? So if we put limits on our children like that, they'll never grow, they'll never expand. Is when we sit back and watch them do what they do. Oh man, wow, far surpassed my limited thought process. And that's what you want, like, wow. But you don't know what your children are capable of. I don't know what I'm capable of, because I still have another 60 years of life. So hey, I'm doing something. So don't limit them like that, in my opinion. Encourage them.
So there's not a minimum, understanding that there's no abundance to where they can go, but is there a minimum, like, hey, you got to be doing better than this? And now that's where my mind goes to, is there a minimum, like, hey, son, daughter, I believe that you should be achieving, I believe there's more out there for you. I believe that you have more to offer than just this. Understanding that your children right now as adults, you can have that conversation with them now. They say, hey, you did well for yourself. I see you as a man now, and as a woman, you are doing well for yourself, better than I would have thought or hoped that you did. You expanded upon my wildest dreams, if that's the case with Tedman. But is there a minimum? Is there a minimum or a reason or a low point where you're like, I'm concerned about your potential and you not achieving that potential? Understanding that, yes, that there is unlimited potential out there, but is there a minimum, like, hey, I think you are selling yourself short, son, daughter? So that's what I worry about as a parent, is that if my children don't succeed in life, that it's my fault as a parent, not instilling upon them everything that I needed to prepare them for the world. That at the end of the day, I didn't do my job as a father to properly prepare them to go out and be able to stand on their own 2 feet and fully tap into that unlimited potential. You know what I mean? So
Are you talking about standards?
So not only standards, but for them to be successful in life. Like we were talking about earlier, you want your children to be better than you were, right? Sure. So at the end of the day, if you see one of your children, just say instantly your daughter, you believe she's very intelligent, very bright, but she just doesn't get to the point in your mind where you believe she can go. Like you believe she can reach the leader of the free world, right, and beyond. But she sells herself short. Maybe she's working in the Barnes and Nobles, for minimum wage, and that's where she sees herself as a successful individual. I don't want to tie it to monetary things or material things. I'm just saying in general, like a status in life, where she feels she's comfortable. Do you believe she's selling herself short? Would you say that, hey, you're not tapping into the potential that you have? You know what I mean? As a parent, should you be concerned?
So if I was to answer that, I would say no, because for one, it's not my life, right? So my goal is to push you towards whatever your purpose is. Mm-hmm. So once you figure out your purpose, as long as your purpose, you're fulfilling that purpose of what you're called to, then I call it success, right? Some people call success millions of dollars, but I call success that little kid that wanted to be a school teacher and grew up to be a great, phenomenal school teacher, right? So for me, I don't necessarily worry about what they're going to become, because I'm making sure that even at this age, I'm instilling into them good character, good conduct, good morals, right? And then providing the right environment in order for them to flourish. And then whatever they choose to do with that flourishing. And once you're outside of my home, of course, I will guide you and help you as much as I can. But it's your choice what you do with that. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help you fulfill that dream. If it is to be a Barnes & Noble clerk and read books all day and hand books out, that's fine, as long as you're able to do it on your own 2 feet and you call it success, right? So that's just me.
I'll say this. The greatest lesson that we could teach our children is to be independent. If your child decides that working at Barnes & Noble is where they want to be, then let them do that. Well, not well. You can't. I mean, give them your support, because maybe they might start out at Barnes & Noble. Maybe they can to where they can buy Barnes & Noble, and then you'll go, yeah, There's nothing wrong with picking up garbage in the street, because that helps me to live a healthy life. So I have much respect for those people. Would I do it? If I had to. My aspirations were a little bit higher, so I got out there and hustled. But I asked my dad for $1 one day, and he told me no. And has it. And I said, okay, fine. So years after, I said, Dad, I needed that right then. Why didn't you help me with that? He said to me, because I knew that you could do it. You just wanted, we are Americans. Everything is instant. We have instant coffee, instant everything. And he said to me, I knew eventually, if it was that important to you, you'd find a way to get it. That was one of the greatest lessons in my life, because now if I want something, I don't put it on credit. I'm like, you know what? If you see me with a credit card and I have one, I have the money in the bank to pay off whatever it is I'm purchasing. And I'm only using that as a tool to get me to the next phase. But if I have to right away, I can pay it off just like that. So again, I taught them to be independent, and they're all independent. What more could I ask for? I'm not putting I'm not going to put any limits on them and go, you could do better than that. How do I know that they can do better than that? Maybe that's all they want to do. And if that's all they want to do, then they're way more successful than I am. So who am I? So.
All right. Yeah, that's good. It definitely puts me in a different perspective. I'm thinking that these guys got to be doctors, got to be lawyers, got to do something to change the world, make it a better place. I think it's natural to have high expectations for your children. To your point is that you don't want to stifle who they are, who they want to become. Just support them regardless, and as long as they're doing what they want to do in life, you chop it up as a success as long as they're independent.
Exactly. I'm good with that.
So Alfred, the original question was, all right, so I was contemplating, hey, is there a minimum that you as a parent have as far as your children being successful in life? Understanding that you want them to be better off than you are. We brought that up earlier in the conversation. However, is there a point where you're saying, hey, child, son, daughter, you can do better than this? understanding that they may have unlimited potential, may think that they're settling for less, and they may be selling themselves short. Is there a minimum of where you believe your children can ascend to?
I don't think I placed a minimum of what I want my son to do or become, and that's just because of the changing times. And to me, being successful, I mean, that's a real broad term that we use. You know, a lot of people equate that to professions, you know, of being a lawyer, a doctor, etc. But like it was mentioned before, you can be successful and be a sanitation worker. You know, you can be successful and work in the fast food business. So I don't think I have set an expectation of what it is I want him to do. I just want him to be successful at whatever it is that he is doing. Of course, I'll encourage him to do maybe some of the similar things I've done, you know. But nowadays, you know, even a college education, you know, it's not needed to make a salary of six figures no more, you know. So me really harping on that and pushing that, I may, you know, hinder him out of something that could have been better or something that he would have become, you know, more successful in. So I don't think there is a minimum. I think you just have to kind of go with the times that we're living in and just kind of encourage them in whatever they're interested in, and just to support them. I think that's the biggest thing, just to show them support, because you teach them and raise them certain things and in life and what to look for and what to not look for. I think that would give them the tools necessary to be, for you, you know, someone that you would want them to be or to become.
All right.
So
go ahead.
I would say my minimum expectation for my kids is that they understand that every action that everything they do has an equal and opposite reaction. That's all I ask, is that when you do something else will happen. And you have to accept what that is. I can't do that for you. I made a lot of decisions based on impulse. A lot of decisions based on impulse throughout my life. And I am alive. Things happened when I did those things. I can't take them back. And, you know.
But to your dad's point, right, there's no wrong decisions.
There's no wrong decision. No. But you have to understand that when you make that decision, something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. That's all I ask. I'm like, you decided that you wanted to do that, right? Yes. Did it work out for you? No. Good. Hey, you knew that was going to happen, right? You knew something was going to happen.
What's the recourse? Do you have a plan B if it does?
Yeah.
Remember, I said you teach them to be independent so they can think for themselves. When they do come up on that brick wall, they're like, okay, how am I going to get around this? Through it, under it, over it, you know? Instead of going, oh, we can't go any further. You can't.
Yeah. But something's going to happen if you do.
We're black. We have to. We have to. You know?
Yep.
So
I think that's even more so to the point. I think raising Black children here in the U.S. is different than the other races, in the point where there's almost an extra set of rules we have to teach our children to navigate our environment. And you see it prominent in a lot of stuff that's been going on within the last month and a half with everything. There's almost a double set of rules, right? Teaching them, hey, not only do you have to be good, you have to be twice as good. Yeah.
Twice as fast.
Half as hard. You got to work twice as hard to get half as much.
Yep.
Exactly. And then you have to step on eggshells not to offend certain people while you do it. So the whole another set of rules for our children. So, unless Sai got anything else, do you have anything else, Sai?
Get a moment you guys were proud of your children. Just like they did this, and I was like, wow, don't even know where they got that from, but I'm proud of them for that moment. So if everybody has one of those, including Alfred, who's 3 weeks on the job.
It was 1 month today.
Oh, I'm sorry,
there we
sir.
go.
1 month today.
Congratulations.
So let's go around the horns, and we can all chime in one of our proudest moments as a father. So we can leave on at least on a high note. So we'll start with you, Ted. Your proudest moment as a father.
I don't want to sound dramatic, but every time I see them, and every time I speak to them, I'm more proud than the last time, because they Tedman he'll call just to say, hey, what's up? No reason. He just, hey, no, I thought about you today. Wow. He's got a house full of madness, and he can take 1 second out of his day to call me and go, are you all right? Yeah, I'm good. He's always been a very caring person. Always. He shows that. I don't show, outside of them, I don't show a lot of emotions, because if I sat down and told you how I got to where I am, you'd wonder why I hadn't become a mass murderer or some ridiculous crap like that. But my proudest moment for him is right now. He's got a village that he can network with, and you're all, like I said, you're all intelligent, more so than I. But he's like, yeah, Dad, I'm smarter than you, but I need to talk to you. You know what I mean? I love that. And I really appreciate you guys including me in this. This is great for me. I haven't spoken this much in months, because I don't talk to people.
Oh, wow.
So this is great.
We definitely appreciate you. You dropped a lot of nuggets, and that's what it's all about, is learning from one another. I definitely am going to take a lot of what you said and try to apply it to how I parent my children. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to impart wisdom and words with us.
Man, so I guess I'll go. I got two for my daughter. The first one, so me and my wife are youth pastors. We do some we do a Bible study once every 2 weeks with our family, and we rotate it. And I think we had went through, I went, my wife went, my mother-in-law went, and I was like, hey, Shantae, it's your turn. Right. I kind of just threw it at her to do a Bible. She's like 6 or 7 years old. Like, it's your turn to do Bible study. And she's like, okay. And just threw something out there. And it was really, really awesome. And even though she didn't use the Bible, she was like, hey, you know how when you squeeze the toothpaste out of the toothpaste can, like the tube, you can't put it back in. Right. So if you squeeze too much out, you have to use it all, or it's wasted. It's the same thing with your words. If you just spit out words, you can't take them back. And that alone, I was like, man, from out of the mouth of babes, you know what I'm saying? Like, a 7-year-old understands that her words are powerful. And she shouldn't waste them. She just shouldn't just use them just to be using them. She shouldn't be using them based on emotions or negativity. She needs to speak words that build and give life. So that was one. And then the second moment for my daughter is, this is, if you know me at all, I am a jokester. This is all about me. So her, they were a lot younger. My son was not even maybe 1 year old. They were taking a bath together. My wife was giving them a bath, and my son has slipped back and went underwater. And she looks at my wife and said, he just got baptized. So, so for her to say that, witty joke right on the moment, I'm like, yes, that's my baby. You know what I'm saying? And then for my son, my son it's a funny story too. He was like, I guess he says what I says a lot, right? He says what I say a lot. And I didn't realize how powerful my words were or how much he does what I do. So he walked up one day. He did something. I did something. He was like, "What the heck, Dad?" I was like, "Whoa, boy, you too." You know what I'm saying? What do you mean? What the heck, Dad? So just his ability to take something funny and use it in the right context. I was like, man, at 2 years old, these kids are amazing. So from that, like I would leave a little nugget. Kids do 80% of what you do and 20% of what you say. So make sure your life is reflecting something good at all times.
Absolutely.
Lots of lies. Tell them lots of lies.
Right. I can't wait to be a grandfather. That's what I say when I become a grandfather. I'm going to tell them all kind of crazy stories. You know what I'm saying? Just make up everything. Anyway.
Well, who wants to go next? Alfred, Tevin?
My proudest moment right now is just the birth.
I was about to say, I would assume it'd probably be the birth.
Yeah, the birth, you know, just seeing them come out and the creation of life. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing.
So has he smiled yet?
Yeah, and I was getting ready to get on that. I was like, probably one of the second things is the when he smiles back at you as you're staring at you. So every day it seems like it gets a little stronger, you know, that he does it, that I smile a little bit, you know, harder. And it's just a beautiful thing. So yeah, I would definitely say with the birth, and then him looking at you and then cracking a smile.
So has he started to form? Because the last picture I saw, he resembled you. Does he resemble more likely you?
No,
your favorite is his wife. Your wife.
He don't resemble me at all. It's all her.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
man.
that's all her. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So
at least I don't see it.
All right. So you'll start to see a lot of different things. And to what Ted said earlier, they all have their own distinct personalities, right? They come out with them. So it ought to be interesting. We'll reconvene this conversation maybe 4 or 5 months from now when his character starts to show. And, and you'll have a lot more stories to say when the character starts to show. It'll be amazing.
Personality for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, that personality. I mean, very distinct. You'll see my one of my proudest moments. 2 boys. One is just like my wife. The other one's more so like me. The one like my wife, he thinks he's a stand-up comedian, and he had said something that had me in stitches. I tried to hold it back. I just couldn't. He leaned into my wife. I think she just got the shower or something like that. And he's like, "Mommy, you smell nice." He's like, "Oh, thank you." He's like, "Just like Walmart."
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. Stop it.
Oh, my God.
Make rocks in the aisles.
He knew exactly what he was saying, and the timing of it. As soon as she was like, "Oh, thank you," he let her walk away like 2 steps, and then he said it slyly out of his breath. Looked at me and his older brother, said, "Just like Walmart." And I was like, "Oh,
got her."
So that's the youngest one. The oldest one. To Joel's point, you want them to try to grow up and be a somewhat of a reflection of you, have certain things in common where you can use as a building point, right, in relationship building. So both my sons, kind of like Joe's, one's somewhat athletic and the other one likes to draw. The younger one likes to draw and do stand-up comedy. The older one was in jiu-jitsu, and the first little match that he won, it was the first was one of the proudest moments I had, because he stood up and we had been practicing and certain things, and I wrestled with him at the house trying to go over the certain things he learned in class. But when he won, it made me proud. Like, man, I taught him something that he used, and it was something that we did together to get him to that point. You know what I mean? So I was like, yes, he did. He learned something and went through something, and it was, the fruit of our labor. So that was a proud moment. One of many, but one that sticks out to me right now. What do you got, Tevin?
So proud moments, 1 through 4. Number 1 is 15. She is living at home with her dad and her grandmother. And she doesn't tell them everything. Because she doesn't feel comfortable enough to tell her grandmother. She doesn't feel comfortable enough to say everything to her dad. She's good with him, but that dynamic is a little bit different. But she came up here and she expressed to me and my wife something very personal involving her sexuality, and it made me feel like I had shown her enough compassion so that way she could tell me something that was very personal to her. And that really made me happy because, you know, I have a great relationship with my dad. I don't tell my mom a lot. I'm telling her more now that I'm older, but I tell my dad everything, and, you know, I don't hold back, and I'm grateful that he is that ear for me. And the fact that she felt like she could do that with me, words can't describe how happy I was. With my oldest son, I missed a lot of firsts with my daughter because I didn't meet her until she was 4. Mm-hmm. The first time he stood on his own, the first time he used a full sentence in context correctly, the first time he played a video game on his own, you know, I know that's the metric now. He's figuring stuff out for himself, and watching that is amazing. For twin girl, she likes to sing and dance, and I'm a bit of a dancer, not the best. I sing. I could quit my day job if I felt like it. I feel like it. But to hear her sing, she doesn't know the words, but she tries, and it's just beautiful to watch. And for twin boy, he is so loving. He'll just come up to you and he'll say, "Hey, Daddy, I love you," and just run away. You know, and it's great. It's great because, you know, you need that. You've had a long day, and, you know, you're tired, your back hurts, and your little boy just comes up and say, "Hey, Daddy, I love you." Pew! He's got such a beautiful heart, and despite his parents, yeah.
Oh man, that was beautiful. So you went through the tribe, and you laid out that's a sign of a father that's present and paying attention. You know what I mean? Anytime where you can say, "Hey, right off the bat, this is my proudest moment." I was like, "Oh, what are my proudest moments?" And
I was trying to pick one.
Yeah. I was like, I you know, as they grow, they never cease to amaze me.
Yeah.
And you can't take for granted what you have, because you'll never be able to get that time back. Time is a precious commodity. Time is something you cannot waste. Everything else you can waste it. You can get it back if you need it, but time is one thing that you just can't. So spend it wisely. All right. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you, Mr. Greaves, jumping on the line.
I'll leave you with a dad quote. Today's dad quote comes from countryliving.com. It reads, "The older I get, the smarter my father seems to get," by Tim Russert. Make sure you join our Facebook group, Brothers in Fatherhood. Follow us on Instagram at Brothers in Fatherhood, and on Twitter at Bros in Fatherhood. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Brothers in Fatherhood. Thanks for listening to Brothers in Fatherhood podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite new podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Drop the Brotherhood a line. If you have a subject you want us to tackle, or you just want your voice to be heard, please send all questions and comments to the Brotherhood at thebrotherinfatherhood@gmail.com. Stay blessed. Stay safe.